Morning glory and evening grace, America. I'm Hugh in Studio West. Pleased to welcome for the first time to the program Steve Hilton. You know Steve from Fox News, of course. He's written many, many books. Wonderful guy around town. Steve, welcome. I hope John Campbell was good to you last week when I was out.
Oh yes, but I'll make do with you today, Hugh. I'll slum it with you, but it's great to be with you. I really appreciate the
I'm
opportunity.
looking forward to having you on a lot if what I think is going to happen happens. I want to talk about Califailure, your new book. But I got to start off from left field. My favorite church in the world is the chapel at New College. I've only been three times.
No,
I've been to Vespers three times. That is the most extraordinary house of worship I've ever been in.
that's amazing. Well, that's where I went to college, which I'm sure is why you're
Yes.
mentioning that. And my favorite story about New College Chapel is, do you know the story of the roof and the beams?
No.
Okay, so the architects, or the builders who built New College Chapel in the whenever it was 15th century, I don't know. You can probably correct me. They thought long term, and they had particular oak trees that they used for the construction. And they thought, well, one day this is going to need to be repaired, so we better plant some trees that will be ready just around about that time. So they planted a whole set of trees in an orchard specifically for the purpose of
Oh
having
my
the
goodness.
repair materials available. Incredible. I love that long-term thinking.
Well, I will tell everyone who's listening, if you're going to England and you're going to find your way to Oxford and you can find you're allowed to go in, the public is invited to Vespers. The
Yes.
music is simply, it will transport you to a different time and place. And so you are lucky. What did you study, Steve Hilton, at Oxford?
So I studied philosophy, PPE is what it's known as in England, philosophy, politics, and economics. I do want to say though that I wasn't in the choir at New College, but I was in the choir at my previous school, Christ's Hospital, and
Oh,
one of the great joys of my life was singing. We're learning to sing in a choral setting and participating in choral evensong, which was just magical. And I'm really, really happy that I learned about and understood choral music. It's so beautiful.
well, I would think it also teach you how to work together with people. And you must have had good
Yes,
conductors and great, great colleagues in that
yes.
course. Let me ask you, when you were there, were you part of the union, the debate union?
Not really. I did join it. I honestly found it a little bit off-putting, and so I didn't get heavily involved in that.
So were you into politics as a young man? Because you obviously have advised David Cameron. You're thinking about running
Yeah.
for governor in California, though you haven't made up your mind yet. But when did you get political?
I really remember, I've always been interested. My parents are Hungarian, and we grew up in a household, in working class family. My stepfather's also Hungarian. Um, and I remember really, my first memory is of the Labour governments in the 1970s in England,
Ooh.
and then very thrilled with Margaret Thatcher. I remember my stepfather, who had worked in construction, and he was not particularly political, but this phrase stuck with me, which was that Margaret Thatcher was for the workers, and the Labour Party were for the layabouts. Probably not a politically correct term to use, but that I remember that as a kid, and so imagine the just how incredible it was that later on, after I'd been to Oxford University, my first job after Oxford was working at the Conservative Party, and that was the year that I started, 1990, was the last year of Margaret Thatcher's premiership. I met her, I worked for her. I then had the incredible honor of being there at a small dinner for her 80th birthday many years later,
Oh,
hosted by
wow.
the then leader of the party, Michael Howard, David Cameron's predecessor. So it was just an incredible thing for someone with my background to end up actually meeting and working with Margaret Thatcher.
Well, bring our audience forward, Steve Hilton. How do you end up in California writing the book Califailure, which we're going to go through chapter by chapter? I lived in California, for your background, from 1978 to 80, and I came back in 89, and I stayed till 2016. My children are all Californian. My wife is a California. I love the state. It's broken. It's so broken that I don't know that anyone can fix it. So I'm eager to hear how you think you can. But give
Right.
us your story. How did you end up here?
So we moved in 2012. My wife was working at that time for Google. She had a big job at Google. I was working in 10 Downing Street. I was senior advisor to David Cameron, as you mentioned, who's prime minister. And it was when our second son was born. Um, we have a young baby in the house and a young son as well, the two boys. And it was just tough, the time difference for her working with California, a lot of travel. And so we just felt that for our sanity as a family, it would make sense to move to California. We didn't intend it necessarily to be a permanent move. We just felt it would make sense for our family at the time. And then something very interesting happened after 4 years of being there. I had an amazing opportunity. I taught at Stanford University, and I started a tech company, and I did all these amazing things. But in 2016, I went back to England to campaign for Brexit, which was slightly awkward because my former boss, David Cameron, was against it and I was campaigning in favor of it. But I remember coming back after that campaign, landing at San Francisco airport. And as we were taxiing in, I just remember looking out the window. I really remember this, thinking, oh, it's so great to be home. And I thought, okay, so this is home now. This
Yep.
is, and I feel that word is not just in a literal sense that it's my home and where we've raised a family and I've started businesses and done these things. It's spiritually my home. I'm not. I don't just love California. I feel I'm in love with California. I feel like this is the place I was meant to be. It
Well,
captures for me
there are
everything.
three Californias. There is Southern California, Northern California, and everything else. Which part of California are you of? Northern California, right?
Well, we live in the Bay Area in Northern California, but honestly, what the great joy of the last 2 years was I've been working on California's policy challenges. I set up a organization, Golden, together. I've been on the road for the last 2 years, getting to know the state. It's absolutely your heart just fills with joy as you drive around and see this magnificent place. Of course, your heart breaks when you see what's being done to it. But I think that if we can capture that spirit of California, which to me it represents the very best in its ideal form, the very best of America. There's a line in the book and I use it at pretty much every event that I do. California means to America what America means to the world. And I think that spirit of opportunity and ambition and swagger and innovation and the rebel spirit, actually, that's what California is
I wish
at
you
its
were.
best.
You're going to have to persuade me of that. I've been on the air in California broadcasting since 1990. I've been doing this show since July 10 of 2000. So I know California up and down and all around. But I left. I left for Virginia because it broke me. And Pete Wilson's listening right now. And I met my wife at a Pete Wilson fundraiser. And the governor knows that I hate saying this. But do you think there's the possibility of turning California around the way that Margaret Thatcher turned Great Britain around?
Yes, and the scale of the task is equivalent actually, because the overbearing, bossy, nanny state bloat of big government in California is absolutely on a par with what you saw in the 1970s and the same kind of sclerosis. I mean, we have the worst business climate in America, which is insane, 10 years in a row, according to the study of, by Chief Executive Magazine. So I think it's possible. I mean, two things I would say. First of all, if you look at what happened in the 2024 election just a few months ago, with President Trump at the top of the ticket, not even really campaigning in California because there was no real prospect of winning the large number of electoral votes. Nevertheless, with President Trump's leadership, you saw 10 counties flip from blue to red in California, including big ones like Fresno County, the fifth biggest city in our state. You saw an overwhelming vote in favor of Proposition 36, which reversed the disastrous Prop 47 that Kamala Harris helped push through all those years ago that legalized crime and theft under $950 and all the other consequences of that. You saw the defeat of George Gascon, the far left Soros-backed DA in Los Angeles County. You saw Bay Area incumbents, whether that's the mayor and the DA, the mayor of Oakland, the DA of Alameda County, where Oakland is, mayor of San Francisco, all defeated in one way or another. And the tide seems to be turning. Then you add on to that the absolute devastation of the Los Angeles wildfires and the way that revealed the consequences of the extremism and the incompetence, put those two things together, of the politicians in charge. And now you're seeing polls coming out. Just in the last few days, we've seen a poll that says that 48% of Californians would consider voting for a Republican governor. I think the tide is turning. People have had enough. They can see it's not working. They feel the pain. And I think the moment is there for a real political revolution in California.
I'm going to come back and talk with Steve during the break and then on the other side as well. Steve Hilton, what's the best website for people to find out about you?
Well, goldentogether.com is my policy organization. You can see all the details there about how we can restore the California dream.
goldentogether.com, and the book is Califailure. That's at Amazon. It comes out next week. We'll be talking about that a lot. I'll be right back with Steve Hilton. Don't go anywhere, America. With Steve Hilton for this short break between the segments when we're live. We'll put it on the podcast and on YouTube. Steve, I think we touched bottom when Lanhee Chen, who is my friend and yours, ran for controller and was maybe the best candidate the Republicans have nominated for statewide office in 25 years. And he had good money, he had good name ID, he had lots of media, and he lost by 10%. That told me, God, how did we ever win?
I don't know. I think that here's a couple of things. You're right in everything you say about Lanhee. He is a good friend. He just was on with me on my podcast just the other day, and we're in close touch. But I think that you don't get as much attention in that race, and I think that the energy wasn't there. You're right. He ran a good campaign. He had a lot of money. He had all the support. All the editorial boards across the state supported him. That's all true. But I think that since then, the pain has got so much worse. You got the fires, as I mentioned. I don't know. Something's different. You're not going to have Gavin Newsom there as an incumbent. That was the case in 2022. I think that people are waking up to the reality, and we need to capture that and turn it into an energetic campaign. I think that's possible. Look, it's not going to be easy. I don't want anyone listening to think, oh, yes, it's obviously so bad in California that people are going to come to their senses and vote Republican. No, I'm not saying that. It's going to be very difficult, but it's not impossible. And therefore, it is worth the fight. And
well, you fought in Brexit. You fought with David Cameron when he won. Do you enjoy the game? I've never run for anything because I just can't stand being out late at night and glad-handing people. Do you enjoy the game?
Well, so I'm not in it, as you know, and we've discussed elsewhere. I am strongly considering running for governor myself, and you've mentioned that. I've been on the road across the state, meeting people right across the political spectrum. I've really enjoyed it. I've loved the chance to get to know the state better, and I'm really fired up by this. I really am. This is an amazing place. It's being completely ruined by this Democrat one-party rule. And I just think that the energy there, I do feel energy from people everywhere I go, not just Republicans, who are saying, look, we can't go on like this. And I do enjoy it. I love meeting people. I've got to tell you, I particularly appreciate meeting businesses because they're at the sharp end of this. You know, back in England, I started restaurants. That is a tough business. I started other companies. And, you know, so I'm an entrepreneur. And I really connect with the pain that business owners are feeling, particularly small businesses. And you hear those stories, and it's both heartbreaking because you think, how can you treat people like this who are just trying to do the right thing and run a business and create good jobs and serve a need in their community? At the same time, it just fills you with kind of a motivation to try and do something about it, to help people.
We'll come right back after the break. It is unfortunately, California is now a pension plan with the state government attached to it and all these millions of people. And it's a very sad situation. I'll be right back with Steve Hilton. Don't go anywhere.